Hello, so today we're gonna be going over how to tackle some issues with your own code getting mixed in with the ladder code. So first thing we're gonna take a look at is the first person camera view. So I have here the advanced ladder system, the one we already implemented. So I'm gonna showcase basically what I find is the best approach how to do this. So if we go into our play mode now, and we go into the camera mode, you'll see that the first person camera sort of goes all the way kind of everywhere, and we don't really want that. We will kind of want to constrain it to a certain area where we want to have that, right? And even if we enter here with the rotation, the camera sort of stays this way, and that's, bad. So let's address this. So first thing I want to do is I want to go to the locomotion, and I'm gonna go to the characters. So what I want to do is I want to go into this, not the base character, but this anim character that inherits from the base, because he has some weapon logic that I want to reuse. So in here I'm gonna create a custom event. I'm gonna call it onLadder. And I'm gonna create another one, which is gonna be offLadder. And in here is basically where we will have all our states. So depending on your code, so this is like if your character has a weapon, this is where we would set, before we enter the ladder, get that weapon off, like unequip a weapon. And once we're off the ladder, then we can equip it back on or something like that. So if we go also in our advanced ladder system, blueprints, base ladder. So in the previous ALS tutorial, we implemented this little code on exit and on enter. So right here, after enable input, we added this code in case character is crouching. And then we had a set movement mode to ladder, and then held object, which is the weapon, we unequipped it, right? And then we used it, then we entered the ladder. So this thing really means this is where we entered the ladder. So what I'm gonna do actually now is I wanna transfer this. So I'm gonna go, and from our character I wanna get onLadder event that we just created. So that's this event here. So that's what's gonna get called in the ladder itself. And I just wanna have that on. So just one event, because it's much cleaner to do this in your character blueprint than it is in the ladder blueprint. So it depends on your project, right? If you have just a little bit of a code that needs to be overwritten, you can do it in the ladder. But if not, then it's probably best if we do it in the actual character. So I'm gonna just copy and paste that here. So this is gonna serve the same way basically. And the character is itself, so I'm gonna get a reference to self. I wonder if I can get the stance, set stance. Yes, I can. So without either this, so I'm gonna switch this, just remove this one and add this one. So I don't need any of this because that's the character. Same thing with BPI, set movement state. Oh no, not that one. BPI set. This one, set movement state, and the movement state is going to be ladder. So I'll just replace this guy here. And just clear the weapon. So in advanced locomotion system, this here clears the weapon from his hand before he enters the ladder. So this is what's gonna happen when we actually enter the ladder. Alright, so let's go back into our base blueprint of the ladder, and this is the logic. So in simplicity, you create a custom event and then call that event before we actually enter the ladder. So this is the event, so on ladder. And in that event, on your character, you just add all the necessary code that you need to have in order to what you don't want your character to do on a ladder while he's on the ladder. So if he has a weapon, this is where you would change it, right? So that's that. And on exit, we have a similar thing that we added. So these two nodes have been added, which is the update the weapon and set the movement mode back to grounded. So in here, we just want to go to off ladder event that we created. So I'm gonna copy these two again, and I'm just gonna call this event. So again, similar logic. It just removes the code from the ladder and adds it to your character. We didn't save the character, that's why this is causing an issue. So if we save the character, compile, there we go, we have ourselves a thing. So off ladder is here. Paste that in, which is the state, which is this state. So I'm just gonna copy and paste that here. So once we here, we want to be grounded. Once we are off the ladder, we want to be grounded, and then we want to update the held object, which is the actual weapon. So this is what happens now. And if we play test real quick, you'll see that nothing has changed. So we still get the same sort of action. And if we get the weapon, let's use a rifle. It clears the weapon, we go up, and then it puts the weapon back in. So nothing has changed just yet, right? Okay, so let's exit and let's go back to our camera. So this is what happens with this particular character. So this is the code for the weapon. There was a question regarding the weapon and the weapon stance. Basically, when you're holding a weapon, that you sort of rotate towards, you get this weird rotation. Now rotation usually is handled. So if we go to character movement and we get the set use controller desired rotation. So once you get on the ladder, you don't want that. So we make sure this is false. And we can also get the set use rotation yaw and make sure that's also blank. So these two need to be blank, and that will make your character be in the right sort of frame, so it won't rotate when you go on the ladder, right? Because we're just deactivating the controller from doing that. So if your character is rotating on the ladder, depending on your project settings, if you use desired rotation or not, you need to turn it off. And if you use controller rotation yaw, you need to turn that off too. And you would turn it back on here when he exits the ladder, right? So this would be what you would do to sort of prevent your character from rotating while on the ladder. ALS doesn't need to do this because they already do it somewhere else in the code. So I'm going to focus more on the player camera, so the first person view now. Alright, so now that we sort of have the base set up, right? So in the base ladder, we have an event called off ladder that gets fired off at the ladder exit. And we have an event called ladder on that gets fired off just before we enter the ladder. And in our character, we set everything that needs to be set while we're on the ladder. So if your character is holding a weapon, we unattach that weapon. And once we get off the ladder, we update that weapon so that it gets attached again. So same thing like that. So even if the player is like things where the player is crouching, so advanced locomotion system has crouching, so we need to uncrouch before we enter the ladder. This is where you would set up that code. So it depends on your character might be proning or doing something else. So anything you need to get rid of before you enter the ladder, this is where you set it up. and this is where you get it back up, right? So once you exit the ladder. All right, so now let's get back into our player viewpoint. So what I want to do is I want to get the player camera manager, because I want to restrict the camera movement. So player camera manager. So this is what I want, and from that I want to get or set view minimum pitch, and I want to set view maximum pitch, and I also want to set view minimum yaw and set view maximum yaw. So what this will do basically is it will lock the camera from going too far right or too far left. Now in order for us to do that, let's just connect this real quick. So in order for us to do that, we sort of need to get a couple of things from this on ladder event. So I want to plug this guy in here, and this guy also in here, just to get the names, and then I can just unplug them because I'm lazy, I don't want to type. So I'll just remove the minimum from both of these, and that's going to be my event. So from here I'll just put that here. And so the problem we're having with the camera is when he's in first person. So in our advanced locomotion system, there's a thing called view mode, right? View mode. So get view mode. So yours might be something different. It can be a bull, it can be whatever you set it, so to transfer it from third person to first person, right? So ALS uses this, so I'm gonna do a little switch, which is gonna give me the first person. So again, yours might be a bull, so you might just do a branch and just plug in a bull. So if he's in first person, do that. In this case, it's a int, so, or a structure. So let's go here. So from first person, we first want to, I actually want to get, so get view pitch min, and I want to get view pitch max, and then I'm gonna get view yaw min, and I want to get view yaw max, and I want to promote each of these to a variable, because these will be our values before we enter. So like I said, this also depends on your project, so whatever you have cooking in your project before, so whatever you set those before, we want to make sure that these stay once we exit. So I'm just gonna line them up like this. So on first person, first we want to get the actual values of these before we change them, and then we want to add this to change them. So this is getting a bit messy right now, but let me just do this real quick. Okay, something like that. Okay, let's just leave it like this. So first we're setting the values. So this is sort of like their temporary values, and then we're gonna change those values depending on how we want to set them up. So in here, in our ladder on ladder thing blueprint, we want to go in the base ladder, so you will see those are exposed down here. So from here we need a pitch and we need a yaw. So what we need is this ladder ladder's orientation in the world, basically. So we want to get actor rotation, and we're gonna split the struct, and what we need is a pitch and a yaw. So the pitch can go directly in. Yaw, however, we want to minus by 90, and then we're gonna put it in here. Doesn't match any. Okay. Once again, we need to compile, save, compile, save. And from that, we can get some custom logic in here. So from the pitch, we can get the minimum and maximum. So to first one, so the minimum pitch would be, so we're gonna minus, and this is the clamp basically radius. So I'm gonna go with 40. Again, so minus 40. And I'm gonna put it into the minimum pitch. And I'm gonna get this up because I'm gonna need it. So, and for the maximum, we're gonna add a plus. And we're gonna add again 40. So 40 up and 40 down, that is the amount we can move up and down once we are on the ladder. So same thing with the yaw. This a little bit up so that it's much easier to navigate. So I'm gonna do the same thing with the yaw basically. So I'm gonna first minus it, and I'm gonna make it a 35. Oh no, 135, 35. And then I'm gonna plug it into the minimum, and I'm gonna get it to plus float and 35, and I'm gonna plug that into the maximum. So I'll compile, and this is going to get our movement. Once we're on the ladder, it's gonna lock it to those values. So once we're off the ladder, however, we need to reset all of those. So what we can do is we can get this one and all these. I'll just copy them and put them here. And I'll go with like this. So connect them all. And once we've done that, now we need to set those initial parameters. So we had a view pitch min, we had a view pitch max, we have a yaw min, and yaw max. So once we get off the ladder, we set it back to its initial values. So now if we play test, we should have our first person camera constrained to these, so I can't move more than this, which doesn't break anything, and I can sort of see my feet and my hands, and I'm off the ladder, and I can do this again. So even if I enter from here, I will follow the movement, and there we go. We have locked our player to our constraints of the camera. And that's how you do first person, so that it doesn't break anything, you know, and it sort of fits. So there we go. Now what I would normally do is to keep this a little bit cleaner than having all sorts of action here. So this is camera related, so this can all be either one macro or a function. So I'm gonna just collapse it to a macro, and I'm gonna call it first person camera settings. And that's gonna be much smaller and much cleaner to sort of read. Then we can get this off here, something like that. Or we can just delete it and connect it directly here. And same thing with this one, so just collapse it to macro, and first person camera settings off. And just continue the line here on the output. And you should be good. And one thing I want to correct, so in our first person camera settings where we set all this stuff, so I made a mistake here, so we need to actually move this. So first we want to cache in all of these, so regardless of being first or third person, we need to cache them first, and then after, only if we are in third person do we want to do this. So just sort of slide this along a little bit, so that will make sure when we exit we actually have these values already set, so we can reset them to their initial state, whereas if we're only in third person while we're caching this, we don't have these values on exit. So we need to have it set like this in order to work properly, right? So now when we go in our third person project, if we enter as third person and exit, all our values are still working. While we're in first person, we enter and the viewport values are also set and everything is working correctly. So just make sure you adjust that as well. Alright, now that we've handled the first person camera mode, let's switch to something else. So I had a question, what happens when a character is like shot while he's on the ladder. So the short answer would be, so once we have an event like getting shot, for instance in the locomotion system we have a ragdoll that's similar to that, right? So once we enter the ragdoll mode, that's like the player died. So what we want to get is while we're on the ladder to be able to enter that ragdoll mode. And to do that we need to tell the ladder that we exited the ladder before we actually do our death or ragdoll events, right? So this is what we need. So we need to find what ladder this is first. And in advanced locomotion system there's the base character and this child of a base character. Now we did everything in the child because only the child has this held object, so that's not in the base. So that's not something that your project may be may have, right? So you may have everything in the base and then sort of like create child from that. So what we need to do is we need to go into the base character, and right here on the ragdoll, when we press this and if we are on the ladder we need to do a little event, right? So but first we need to know what ladder this is, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into event graph, and in the base class I'm gonna create another custom event, and I'm gonna call it search for ladder. And on this we are going to do sphere trace by channel, and for that I need get actor location and get actor forward vector. we are going to multiply this by a float. Let's say a float of 150. And the start of the trace is going to be our character, and the end we need to plus vector, so we need to add the location to this, and this is going to be our end location. So the radius of the sphere, let's make it 20. Let's use the visibility channel, and let's just do persistent for now, just so we can see where that is being fired. And from that we're gonna get a branch, so if we hit something, and we're gonna break hit result, and from our break hit result we're gonna get the hit actor, and we're gonna cast to BP ladder base. And if we get it, then this is going to be the ladder we are on, so promote that to a variable, and this is our ladder. So simple as that. And what we need to do now is call this in our ladder blueprint. So right here where we called it on ladder event, we also need to call for this one. So we're gonna search for ladder. Now I would put this probably right after he climbs the ladder, because he's then rotated towards the ladder, so this will search right forward, right where the ladder is, whereas he's standing sideways and he uses it, it will search in the wrong direction. So this sort of makes sure that this searches in the right direction. So if we are on the base, let's go back to our base character. So this will give us our ladder that we're climbing. And if we go into inputs, so when we press the ragdoll event, so again this could be your death event, so when death needs to happen, this is what we do, right? So if we are on the ladder, we have that from our movement state, so yours might be different, but same things, same rule applies. So we're gonna get it, we're gonna say is valid. So if we have this, if it's valid and we are on the ladder, then we need to actually call this set ladder exit event that's in the ladder, right? So from the ladder, set ladder exit. So we need to tell the player that we just exited the ladder before we do any sequence. So now from this onwards, it can be death, or it can be, in this case, ragdoll, and that's about it. So now if we test it, so we're gonna go on the ladder, you see it traced, it found the ladder. If I press X, death occurs, and we continue on. Same thing here. So it found what ladder this is. So if you get shot or something like that, then you exit the ladder and then do the whatever stuff you got going on your death animations or ragdoll, like in this case, and stuff like that. So that's how you basically do that a little bit. So the important thing to note is that before you do any actions while you're on the ladder, you need to exit the ladder. You need to call this event that calls all these other actions to perform, that sort of unties your character from the ladder, and then do the actions that you want to do. So kind of like in here. And that's how you do the basic events while you're on the ladder.